Welcome to Football Game Plan's Power Rankings. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and today, as always, action-packed show. We're going to get into our NFL Power Rankings from teams 1 through 32. But first, let's start off with some stock up and stock down. How about we start with some stock up and let's look at that Mississippi State Bulldog victory against LSU. This was a team that came out, new coach, new quarterback, new offensive system in that air raid offense, and he went out and took it to the reigning national champion LSU Tiger defense. I thought defensively they did a great job of harassing Myles, Brennan. So Mississippi State's stock is definitely up as they're going to head more into the meat of their SEC schedule. You also look at that Georgia Bulldogs defense. Quite honestly, if it wasn't for their defense and Richard LeCounte, the outstanding safety that had 2 interceptions, Arkansas may have pulled the upset in their opening game against the Razorbacks. So that defense of Georgia definitely has their stock going up as they head into next week. How about Mac Jones, the quarterback for Alabama, replacing a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, who is now in the NFL? I thought Mac Jones did a great job in pushing the ball vertically down the field. And if they're going to continue to have the potent passing game that we saw the last couple of seasons from Tua Tagovailoa, then Alabama is going to be very tough to beat once again. And one more stock up, going back to that LSU game, you look at Gaye, the outstanding junior college transfer edge rusher. He was the one guy, maybe Jabril Cox as well, who had a touchdown on a pick 6. But Gaye was a guy that was a constant nuisance to that offense of the Bulldogs. And if he's going to be able to pressure the quarterback like this all season long, he may be one and done in Baton Rouge. Now let's look at some stocks who are down, and that's Myles Brennan, the quarterback for LSU. Again, replacing a guy like Joe Burrow and what he did for LSU and what that offense did last year is going to be tough. But when you look at how he played and how he dealt with pressure, he has to get better if LSU wants to turn their season around and head in the right direction. And I think Florida State has ended up on either our stock down list or gut check list in our college football show every week. This is a football team that's one of the blue blood programs in college football, and right now they look no different than the Division II squad. But shout out to Division II, not to knock them, but man, Florida State has to pick it up and play better. Also, Felelpe Franks has to pick it up and play better. I was one of the last people on the Felelpe Franks bandwagon, giving him his props for what he did at Florida the latter part of his time there, but he has to play better. Those interceptions and inconsistent play cost him a chance to upset the Georgia Bulldogs, and if he can't play better, then there's going to be more of the same for Franks and an Arkansas Razorback football team in 2020. And another stock down, you got to give the college football polling system a huge thumbs down, stock down. The Raging Cajuns are 3-0, 3 impressive victories where they had to come back and fight through adversity and win that game. They were ranked 19th in the top 25, and the only reason they dropped out of the rankings was because the 2 Power 5 conferences that decided to come back and play in 2020, the Big Ten and Pac-12, they put some of those teams in the top 25. They haven't even played a game yet. We don't even know if they're going to play a game, yet they dropped my Raging Cajuns out of the top 25. So a big thumbs down, stock down for the college football polling system. How about we move over to some NFL stock up, stock down, starting with stock up. And quiet as kept, Teddy Bridgewater is playing some of the best football of his career to start the season. Right now, he has 74% completion percentage, which is the highest of his career, something that people knocked him for all throughout his career. His yards per attempt, that's at 8.4. That's a full 1.3 yards ahead of his best year, which was his rookie season, and he's averaging 290 yards a game. Everyone said he was just a check down Charlie, but that's not evident this year with Carolina. And he's had his best QBR so far this season. So Teddy Bridgewater is playing some really good football. I also believe the stock is up for rookie wide receiver Justin Jefferson for the Minnesota Vikings, who had a 176-yard day, his breakout game against the Tennessee Titans. So if that was a sign of more things to come, then we should expect that from the rookie coming out of LSU in that passing game for the Vikings. Darrell Henderson of the Rams has stacked back-to-back impressive games on top of one another, coming off of his first 100-yard game of his career. Again, he's the guy in the backfield for the Rams that gives him that home run element. So I think what happened last week in Buffalo is just a sign of more things to come for the tremendous tailback coming out of Memphis. And stock is always up for Nick Foles when he comes off the bench. That's just what he does. Bring him off the bench. He's going to bring your team back for a victory. Now, let's see if he can carry that over to the next game where teams have a game plan for him and hope that he can continue to keep this team undefeated as the Bears are off to an impressive 3-0 start. And the stock is up as well for Alvin Kamara, who signed that big contract in the offseason. He's the guy on the Saints offense that teams now fear. It used to be Drew Brees. It used to be the passing game. No, it's going to be Alvin Kamara this season and for the near future, because he's one of the best players with the ball in his hands that we have in the NFL. Taking a look at some stock down now in the NFL, and we have to start with Alvin Kamara's teammate Drew Brees. His arm strength right now is really hindering the Saints' passing game. They can't attack deep down the field like we've seen them do throughout the course of the time he's been in New Orleans, and right now he's costing his team yardage and also points. And the Dallas Cowboys defense definitely has a stock down. They have shown so far this year, outside of the Rams game, and even in that game, they struggle to get stops. They can't get stops. They can't get off the field. And right now, they're putting a lot of pressure on that Cowboys offense to really match points with the opponent. And Sam Darnold's confidence is definitely down. His play is what it is, and he can improve that. But if you are now struggling with confidence and you're questioning whether or not you have the viability to be a starter at the NFL level, that is huge red flags. The sirens have to go off. They have to find a way to get him back mentally on the right track in order to turn his season around. And Carson Wentz, definitely stock is down. He has to play better. I know there are some other circumstances around his play that we can talk about, but I think what is happening with Carson Wentz, he's focusing too much on the outside noise. He's worrying about what the media will say. He's worrying about what his teammates' perception is. All you have to do is go out there, play your game, play well, and everything else around you will work itself out. And Joe Judge's stock is definitely down. This football team came out against the San Francisco 49ers last week, a team that had a lot of injuries to key stars, and they looked like they weren't in the same class with a team that was missing so many key players on both sides of the ball. So Joe Judge's message that we heard all in the spring, all off season, it hasn't been heard by this football team, and he has to get this thing turned around and have those guys play a lot better. Be sure to order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion on footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Coach Marion goes through the ins and outs of his explosive offense, one that's tearing up the college football field and putting a lot of points on the scoreboard. Again, you can order your copy at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. As we've reached a quarter point of the NFL season, let's take a look at the MVP race and see who's leading the pack as we enter Week 4. Nick Chubb will be my dark horse candidate to win the MVP award. He's right now leading the league in rushing touchdowns with 4. He's averaging 5.7 yards a carry, 97 yards a game. I think he'll finally cross that 1,600-yard mark this season. He'll go on a nice little run. So keep an eye on Nick Chubb down the stretch. Aaron Donald is already on pace to eclipse last year's numbers. And again, it's always good to have a defensive guy in the race, and this is a year where I think if he can continue this up, he may have a chance to finish it at the end with the trophy in hand. Lamar Jackson won the award last year and is off to the same start he had last season. He had a great start in Week 1, great start in Week 2. Week 3, he had a down game. Last year, you saw that against Kansas City, and he went on that historic run toward winning the MVP. So after last night's performance against Kansas City once again, let's see if he can go on another one of these runs. Who is on a tremendous run right now is Dak Prescott. He's playing lights out. He's the reason why the Cowboys are in a lot of these ball games. He's playing above his pay grade, and Dallas needs to rectify that and pay him a lot more than what he's making. And Russell Wilson, to me, is arguably tied for second right now in the MVP voting, if you want to look at it that way, because he's playing bonkers. He has his team 3-0. He's playing winning football. He has 14 touchdown passes already on the season. He's playing MVP level football, so it was shocking to see that he hadn't had a vote for MVP prior to this year. I think he's going to get many more and could end up winning it in the end. At number 2, I have Josh Allen. You talk about a guy that's playing out of his mind. He is playing out of his mind. Already has over 1,000 yards passing, 10 touchdown passes, a comeback victory against the Rams. He's playing great football in between the 20s, and also inside the 20, he's playing like he has always played. So it's all starting to come together now for the third-year pro out of Wyoming. And Patrick Mahomes, to me, is still the number 1 candidate. This is a guy that is playing ridiculous level of efficiency right now. Deeper down the field, he's connecting. Intermediate down the field, he's coming back. He's showing a little bit of mobility this year, scrambling out, picking up first downs with his legs. So he's playing a complete game. His team is undefeated. He looks like the best quarterback in football. It's power rankings time, and we'll start as always with number 32 and work our way up to number 1. Right now, the Jets look like a team that's up the you-know-what creek without a paddle. They're battling through it. At least defensively they are, but offensively it's very offensive, and they need a quick turnaround as they could be playing for jobs on Thursday night against the Broncos. The New York Giants haven't looked as bad as the Jets, but they are killing themselves with inconsistent play on offense, which then puts a lot of pressure on a defense that has started games playing well. So it'll be up to offensive coordinator Jason Garrett to get the offense on the right track this week against the Los Angeles Rams. Minnesota came close to pulling one out last week against Tennessee, but unfortunately, what has caused them to lose the previous 2 games ended up costing them this one, and that's turnovers. If they can eliminate those, they'll start racking up W's. After an impressive opening day win versus Indianapolis, Jacksonville has started to slowly turn the ball over, which cost them their last 2 matchups. Their defense looked like a completely different unit against Miami, and hopefully that extended rest can get them, and their offense for that matter, back in gear. Judging by Thursday night's performance, the Miami Dolphins seems to be ready to string together a couple of wins, and we'll see if their win against Jacksonville was an aberration or a sign of things to come. The last 2 weeks have been outright brutal for the Atlanta Falcons, finding new and creative ways to lose ball games. Mentally, it can be detrimental, but that's why it'll be up to head coach Dan Quinn to get his team in a right frame of mind so they can start to finish a lot of these games. Cincinnati is another squad that seems to be on the cusp of getting their first win of the season. It almost came last week against Philly. If they can start protecting Joe Burrow a little bit more, the wins will start to follow. I don't think there is any team in the NFL that needs a win more than the Philadelphia Eagles. They had a chance last week versus Cincinnati, but a crucial penalty in overtime sealed their fate. Again, this team is close to winning a game, and they are not as bad as their record may indicate, in my opinion. Washington seems to be heading in the wrong direction. Yes, Dwayne Haskins has to play better, but he is also only in his 10th start of his career and doesn't have the same amount of luxuries that other young quarterbacks that are starting have. Let's hope he gets the same level of patience that is afforded to others that don't look like him at the position. The Detroit Lions got off the schneid last week against Arizona, and it was the first time where I saw a completely team effort in the win. Offense, defense, special teams all did their job in getting the victory, and that's the type of total team effort they'll need to carry over the rest of the way. Denver, despite their injuries, have played really hard this year, and you can make a case that they should be at least 2-1, but your record are what it says you are, and you hope they can finally get a win soon, as starting 0-4 is very hard to overcome. The Houston Texans are in the same boat as the Broncos and could have won last week, but they didn't, and overall, they have to play with much better consistency. They have a huge game this week against Minnesota, giving them a real legit chance at their first W.
Well, the game of football has taught me so many things, man. Now, think about the huddle we have right now, right? I tell people this all the time. There's a reason why they call it a huddle. People have been huddling all their lives, trying to find ways to enhance each other's lives. The great teams do that all the time. The great teams do that. The better the huddle, the better the team. And so it's simple, man, how if you huddle for all the right reasons, we wouldn't have Ferguson. We wouldn't have some of the challenges that we have in our society. But as we all know, there's always a moment when somebody doesn't belong in the huddle. And yet we have to continue to move on. We got to continue to play. So the game of life, man, is always starting with the huddle. And for me, I'm lucky enough to know that, by the graces of God, man, it's been a nice huddle. It's been a nice huddle. And if I just keep making sure that he's in front of me, I'm gonna be all right.
The Chargers haven't looked bad under rookie quarterback Justin Herbert. They've actually been in position to win both games against Kansas City and Carolina. If he can tighten up the mistakes a little bit earlier in the contest, they'll start to break through and win some games. I think this team will get better as the season moves forward. Carolina got their first victory of the season against those Los Angeles Chargers, and we look at why they did. Their defense stepped up big in this ball game, was able to close it out at the end, also forced some turnovers. If they can replicate that performance, they have the offense to really make some noise in the NFC South. Chicago is up next. They're 3-0, which is great, but their 2 victories, in my opinion, under Mitchell Trubisky were a little bit sketchy. So yes, they got the win as Nick Foles came in off the bench and led that team to a comeback victory against the Falcons. So we're going to start evaluating the Chicago Bears from a 0-0 standpoint moving forward, because if the offense looks a little bit better, we know they have the defense to really win some games and be a factor in that division as well. The New Orleans Saints have fell off the last 2 games. We saw an uninspired performance against the Raiders, especially on defense, and against the Green Bay Packers. Their defense had those mental lapses, but I was more concerned about the offense and their lack of ability of pushing the ball downfield. That has to get better if they want to turn this thing around and get back to the playoffs. We already spoke about how the stock is down with this Cowboys defense, but they do have to turn this thing around and get better. On paper, their defense should be able to get pressure on a quarterback, and right now the only guy that's pressuring the quarterback with consistency is the one that hadn't played in 5 years, in Aldon Smith. So they have to do a better job up front, which will then help out the back end. The offense is already in place and already is playing in midseason form. The Browns have won 2 straight games, and I like the way they're playing. They're letting their run game set the table for the rest of their offense, and their defense is starting to turn the ball over a lot. Yes, they played the Bengals and Washington. However, those were teams that had positions or were in position to win those games, but the Browns found a way to close the deal and keep those teams on the other end of the scoreboard. So I like how they're building toward the midway point of the season. If they can keep it up, they'll win many more games like they did against Washington. San Francisco surprised me last weekend with all of the injuries that they had on offense and on defense. It didn't matter. They came out there with the guys that they had on the roster and was able to dominate against the New York Giants. This is a football team that shows you it is well coached by Kyle Shanahan. I like the way the Colts are playing also. They can run the football really well. Right now, Phillip Rivers is protecting the football, is not being asked to do much, and defensively, they're still the best unit, I believe, in that AFC South division. I know the Titans will have something to say about that, but the Colts are playing some really good football. And yes, they took a loss last week against the New England Patriots, but the Las Vegas Raiders still look like a playoff team in my eyes. Earlier in that contest, it was back and forth, nip and tuck, just 2 good football teams going at it on a Sunday, so I'm not going to knock them too much for their loss against New England. Arizona's loss dropped them out of the top 10, but I still believe this is a team that will go toe-to-toe with both the Seahawks and the Los Angeles Rams for the top spot. Kyler Murray being a little bit more assertive and a little bit more decisive and not play like he did against Detroit will get this team back on the winning track. As we enter the top 10, we look at the Los Angeles Rams coming off of a tough loss, but a valiant effort against the Buffalo Bills. They had a huge deficit in that ball game, worked their way back into the lead, only to fall at the end with a controversial call. But this is still one of the better football teams in the NFL. And we're starting to see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers pick up the slack on the defensive side, on the offensive side, and starting to match what their defense is doing. Right now, they're having a ton of balance on offense, and defensively, you have to like what you've seen so far from their pass rush and also their rookie safety, Antoine Winfield Jr. Tennessee is probably one of the more steady teams in the NFL. They showed some resolve last weekend when all looked to be lost against Minnesota. They found a way to get back into it and ultimately get the win. Great coaching job there by Mike Vrabel. Pittsburgh is just stacking wins on top of one another. They're 3-0. Big Ben is going to get better as each week passes. The run game is starting to click, so this offense is starting to look a lot like what we've seen from Big Ben and Pittsburgh in years previous. Their defense, to me, is still a very good unit at all 3 levels. Baltimore took a huge loss on Monday night against the Kansas City Chiefs, one that really questioned whether or not this team will have the psyche to continue forward. But we saw this happen last year with Baltimore, and they were able to go on this ridiculous run to a 14-2 record. So let's see if they can rebound, rebuild, and start to reload in the right direction and get back on a winning track. Cam Newton has been exactly what the Patriots expected him to be and what they wanted from that position, giving them a multifaceted offense. Defensively, they're still one of the better, well-coached defenses in the NFL, and they have a huge matchup this week against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. So it's going to be must-see TV once again for New England and KC. But at some point, the New England Patriots will have to go through Buffalo because the Bills are for real. They're playing great defense offensively. Josh Allen has done exactly what you wanted to see him do in his 3rd season as a starter. A guy that has shown growth, has shown maturity, has shown the ability to make plays happen deep down the field, now in the passing game. So all of that combined has the Bills alive out there in Buffalo. In the NFC, you look at Green Bay and how well they're playing. Their offense is averaging about 35 plus points a game. Defensively, they are starting to cause turnovers, so they're playing great football, good complementary football on both sides of the ball. This is one of the better teams in the NFC. So is Seattle. The Seahawks have arguably the best player in the NFL right now in Russell Wilson. Defensively, even though the Legion of Boom is not there, the mindset is still the same. And this time they have another guy that's leading the charge, and that's Jamal Adams. And their pass rush is starting to get home and really frustrate quarterbacks in the pocket. But when you're talking about quarterbacks and not getting frustrated in the pocket, you're talking about Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and what they're doing on offense is just remarkable. Guys are able to work touchdown to check down. They're running the football really well. Their defense quietly made some great adjustments to that first drive from Baltimore and really shut down that offense of the Ravens. So I like what they're doing on both sides of the ball. Kansas City is still undefeated and clearly the best team in the NFL. So that's it for this week's Football Game Plan Power Rankings. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts. And don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network located at youtube.com/Football Game Plan. Also subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast and leave us a 5-star rating.